Welcome to the Kind of Intentional podcast. Life gets full fast and it's easy to drift from the life you actually want to build. Each episode, we're taking on one real life topic, sharing honest stories, and pulling out practical ideas you can actually use. These episodes, they're short, they're focused, and they're intentional because your time matters, and so does the life you're building. I'm here with my co-hosts plural, Sean Horsley and Danielle Andrew.
How's it going, y'all?
Hello, everyone.
See, sometimes if you get into too much of the groove and you make this too smooth, then everybody's just going to be jumping in. And so today, I intentionally stumbled through that just so that way everybody was off their game today. So
what a gentleman you are.
Listeners out there, you have no idea how hard it is to intentionally mess up your words and to stumble over things like plural aspects of it. And so that's my fun fact today. Sometimes just intentionally mess up words and see how it messes with everybody else around you, like twerking or torquing. Some people get really confused with those two words, but there's definitely a difference between twerking and torquing.
It throws everyone off.
All right, today we're talking
enunciation is important.
So is spelling, but I don't do any of those things well. What sounds like an awesome idea is let's start a podcast for the guy that can't enunciate or spell.
It's just a way for you to grow.
I know, for sure. What is the episode about today?
Overcommitment.
Yeah, why overcommitting feels productive. This is a tough one. This is in our series on productivity, whole months about it. We started with our 4 F's, the faith, our family, our fitness, and our finances. We're breaking that down a little bit more. Sometimes when we have our priorities, detailed out, sometimes we still overcommit ourselves because it feels productive. What does that mean to you, Danielle?
I think that people, at least the way I interpret that, is you get, the busier you are, the more successful you are, or the more filled your calendar is, the more people that want to be around you, or whatever it is. And truly, overcommitting to things is just giving less of you to the people who matter the most.
Yeah.
And so it's odd when you think about things like that, whether it's, saying yes to a committee at your job that's, added, you're not getting compensated for it. But it's added time. Yes. Anything like that, serving in some capacity at your church or whatever it is, you are only hurting the people that are benefiting from that if you overcommit.
Yeah. So I think sometimes that what you're saying is sometimes we confuse movement and movement and motion with momentum. And we're pushing against so many things, but we might be moving super, super slow at everything that we're pushing against because we're just dividing our energy. We're dividing everything that we do. Sometimes we say yes to so many friends, it's just so many parties, so many activities outside of there that we never develop any deep relationships with anybody because, sometimes I've found in, one of the things that we've talked through there is if you are in a group of 10 people, you can't have deep conversations. You invite so many people to the things, you say yes to so much that you can't develop that deep thing. And so what we're really talking about there is this kind of whole concept of saying yes to too much can be such a negative connotation. And where this idea really came from, my previous employer when I was working had a large team that reported to me. So it had multiple departments, well over 600 people that reported to me. And I got into a season and it was almost like a badge of honor. The busiest week that I had 34 meetings in a 40-hour work week. So in a 5-day period, I had 34 scheduled appointments on that thing. And it wasn't until I was talking to kind of a low level, not from a position, or demeaning, but just an individual at the organization that just wanted to ask a real simple question. But because you're in so many meetings and they may be in different parts of the building or whatever the case may be, I was constantly rushing from one area to the next, just to try to be on time for that next thing. Certainly want to be on time, but what really kind of struck me was just the perception that I was giving off from rushing from one thing to another because I was just overcommitting myself to all these meetings so that when my opinion would be there, that I would be able to help. And, in most cases, you feel like you're serving others by being part of that meeting. You're contributing yourself and your energy. And it really struck me. I can remember the conversation where I was standing in that building is just this urgency that I was portraying to everybody meant I didn't have time for it. And so
even if that's totally not what you meant and totally not what your heart was.
Yeah, For sure. And John Maxwell has a great quote. He said, walking slowly through the crowd. He talks about how important it is to walk slowly through the crowd. And I remember coming out of that meeting and then just pulling my directors together and be like, this is unsustainable. Like I physically can't do 34 meetings. Not only that, but you just are, there's a level of exhaustion that sets in because you're just trying to maintain that I was like, we just have to find a way, to delegate so that there's responsibility, that there's reporting, that there's note taking so that we can all be on the same page. But that walking slowly through the crowd was just such a game changer because I realized like 20 meetings in a 40-hour week is my max, so 21-hour commitments and a 40-day or 40-hour week is about the max that I can do, because at that point in time, I can't be present for what truly matters, for those conversations, to walk slowly through the crowd, like John talks about in that kind of quote. It was just such a thing. So that was where this idea of this overcommitting kind of came from, because we're so apt to say yes to so many things. And sometimes it's because it's that FOMO. We don't want to miss out. We don't want to miss out on that meeting. We don't want to miss out on that decision. We don't want to miss out on that party that all of our friends are going to, because we want to have the inside jokes and the laughter and everything else. But it just feels sometimes good in the moment to say yes. But how do you respond to that, Danielle?
I think that like it almost feels like I've just had weeks where it's going to be I'm sure you've said this. We've all said this. It's going to be a really busy week this week, guys.
Yeah.
Okay. You get through your week, and then the next week it's going to be another really busy week, guys. You're not making progress towards anything. You're just existing. You're just going through the motions. And I think that's what I was doing for so long was, and why I think that shifting your mindset is such a big, benefit, is that you aren't here just to survive and get through the day.
No.
That's not why you're here on this earth. That's, there's a greater purpose for you, which is, bringing in those 4 F's again. There's a greater purpose for you. There's a reason that your day is starting off the way that it is. And so we can choose to look at things in a specific way. And I think that busy feels like we're making a lot of progress towards things.
Make us feel important, right?
But we're not making any progress towards that. And I think
towards what matters most in
right.
cases. Yeah. So I totally agree with what you're saying there. And so I think, sometimes we confuse like this idea of margin is wasted time. Like I think sometimes we just feel like margin is wasted. And we just had this conversation the other day where like we're so apt to consume all day that our minds don't even have any ability to have margin anymore, to just kind of process. We're so used to like, getting out of meetings to listen to something, to jumping into the car, to listening to music or talk radio or podcasts or whatever the case may be, that our minds are never able to actually just like rest, because we're so overcommitted to consuming every single day that we're not creating. We're not creating space for our minds to rest. We're not actually just physically allowing our minds to wander and ponder. And most of the times, that's where there can be so much breakthrough, is just by saying no to some things and giving our minds the ability to just recover, to not consume, to not scroll, to not stream, to not whatever, to say no to those things. I mean, we're not even saying like those things are easy to say no to, because you're not disappointing somebody. I mean, I think sometimes when we talk about like saying no, it's we instantly think about that friend inviting us to a party, and you don't want to disappoint that person because they've physically invited you, and you don't want to disappoint that person to saying no. But what you have to kind of flip the script is like you can say no to the amount of scrolling and streaming and consuming that we're doing.
Yep.
And in some cases that is overcommitting. You go straight
100%.
in where you've just used a lot of brain power, that you've really dug deep into things, and then all of a sudden you go straight into scrolling through Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever the case may be, and you're just consuming more and more and more. And so you are selectively said yes to consuming more things in your mind that are even creating more distraction. So I think thinking through that, like we're not even saying no to other people. We're actually saying no to some of our technology and some of our devices, which hopefully is a whole lot easier for most of us because we're not physically disappointing anybody face to face.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good distinction, because I'm a recovering people pleaser over here, and
you're raising your hand, so it's just I love it.
I'm recovering. I do talk with my hands, remember?
Yeah, now everybody can tell. Everybody's on.
Now everybody can tell. Great.
Yeah.
No, but I think when I think of overcommitting, I like that you made that distinction, because when I think of overcommitting, I think of overcommitting myself to others.
Yeah, right.
And so I love that you made that distinction, because, there are so many times that I've just overcommitted to myself.
Right.
I overcommitted to couch rotting, or I overcommitted to, you know, taking some time to myself. Like, what did I use that on?
Yeah.
So I think, I like that shift, because when I was thinking about it, it was, for me, learning how to, you don't have to say, nothing requires an immediate yes,
No.
right? It's not life threatening. If someone is asking something of you, it's probably normally not life threatening. Will there be an instance maybe where it
Maybe.
could be? Maybe, potentially.
Yeah.
That's not what we're talking about though. And, I've had to prioritize, like, giving myself the space, because I want my yes to mean yes.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't want it, like, how what's the phrase where I'm doing 100 things at 50%
Yeah.
or whatever. You're not completing anything to 100%. And so, pausing is okay. Asking, can I think about it?
Yeah.
Can I take some time and let you know? That is totally okay. But I love that you brought in that, we can overcommit to ourselves too. I think that's a
100%. So
huge thing.
let's talk about protecting margin as we think through this. And, maybe what we do is we flip the script on what would typically be here, where we're saying no to others. We're saying no to the committees or anything like that. Certainly there's a time and there's a place to that. But I think what we're talking about here is saying no to the technology overload. We're saying no to trying to overachieve and some of these things. And so certainly that's so much easier, because certainly we can talk about how to say, oh, well, let me think about this. Let me ponder it for 24 hours. Let me check my calendar before I get there. All those things are great. Like, I'm not disagreeing with that. And there's a time and there's a place where we have to get there. But I think one of the things that we could easily say is, like, okay, let's say instead of overcommitting to technology or overcommitting to consuming, let's just do something really easy. Instead of technology, a timer as to how much time we can spend on TikTok, or how much time we can spend on Instagram, how much time we can spend on Facebook. Because I love it. The creative ideas that you can get from some of those apps are just incredible. Just the crowd sharing of ideas and things. But sometimes you can get so overcommitted where you've just like, you saw this dinner and you're like, I'm going to make that. That's going to be fantastic. My kids are going to love that. My family's going to love that. And now you're at 5 stores. You're frustrated. You're swearing because you can't even figure out how to, like, bake it the right way. And all we did was we created a whole bunch of challenge for ourselves.
And you probably didn't even enjoy the meal by the end of it anyway.
And all we did was overcommit, which, again, we're coming back to our family being this priority for us. Really what it wanted was that present time where you can share a conversation, where you don't have stress, where you can just do life together and ask those questions. Because again, what we're talking about here is, like, every time we say yes to that technology, those distractions, those overcommitments, that overconsuming of content, we're saying no to being mindful, to be resting, to being present in our current environment. Because, intentionally deciding what we're going to invest our time and our energy to is going to be a whole lot better than over consuming accidentally.
Yeah.
So
for sure,
we're so grateful that everybody's listening to this content. We're constantly getting some feedback now. We'd love it if you provide a comment. You just like us. You'd share this content with us. We like good feedback. We like bad feedback as to how we can improve this, because we're really trying to make this better. Because one of the things that we really want to try to do is we want it to be a little bit more intentional today so we can be better tomorrow.
Thanks for joining in, guys. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Catch you next time.